You're watching Outsiders, and thank you for watching Outsiders. It's a dark day, as we've been saying, not only here in Sydney, the after events of the horror show at Bondi Junction yesterday, but also now there is an attack on Israel from Iran, drones and missiles. Joining us now is Dr. David Adler. Now, David, you live in Bondi, you know the area very well. You run the Australian Jewish Association, which has the largest social media network in Australia of the Jewish community. Now, the first thing is the police are telling us categorically there was no ideological or religious motivations behind the killing, although, as we've been discussing, they don't know what the motivation was. But what I wanted to ask you about, David, is the impact before the killer or during the slayings and in the immediate aftermath. You would have been inundated with social media photos. I was certainly, but it would have been much more on yours. The terror, regardless of what the motivation of the killer was, there was terror stalking the streets of Bondi Junction, and the Jewish community would have been rightly terrified.
Absolutely correct, Rowan. And of course, we are in a very heated environment anyway. And initially, to not make too light of it, it walked like a duck and quacked like a duck and looked like a duck. And a lot of people thought, yes, this was terrorism. Throughout the world, not just in Israel, but in France, in the UK, even in America and some European countries, there was many examples of these so-called lone wolf terrorists that use a large knife to carry out their crimes. And that was the original assumption, and I understand that assumption, obviously, and we're very relieved, if you can use that word in such a tragic context, that it does not appear to have been terrorist motivated.
And what was it like for the Jewish community? I mean, it must have been absolutely horrific.
Well, it was a shock, and it's a shock anyway because Westfield complexes are associated with a famous Jewish family, the Lowys, of course, and they're known as supporters of Israel. Bondi Junction is the commercial centre of the eastern suburbs. The eastern suburbs has the largest Jewish community in Sydney. And we know, I don't have permission to identify the names, but amongst the victims were Jewish people, as you would expect, attacking in a crowd indiscriminately in that location. There will be Jewish people amongst it. So it has impacted the community, regardless of whether it was terrorist motivated or not.